Hello to all viewers, hello to everyone. I am Shiloh, the last scribe for the house of Jacob. I am a messenger and a true servant of the Almighty. On November 29th, 2019, the Almighty will visit the earth to judge every living thing. On that day, every living thing will be given life or death. The Almighty has caused me to see who I am and to know that I am a real descendant of the house of Jacob. This video is part 11 of a series of videos titled The Book of Genesis, Unsealed and Untold, and these series of videos cover everything in the book of Genesis from chapter 1 to chapter 50, with all the confusion removed, with all the allegories removed. In these series of videos you will hear the truth according to the Almighty, according to what the Almighty commanded the house of Jacob to keep recorded. Part 10 ended with Abram's wife, Sarai, offering Abram her handmaid so they together can produce a child. So I will continue where I left off. Let's begin video number 11. Sarai spoke to Abram, saying, "Now, look, the Almighty has stopped me from giving birth to a child. I am under his restraint. I pray that you go in unto my maid with sexual affections. It could be that I can have children by her. I could be a mother by possession." Abram listened and understood. He agreed and obeyed the voice of his wife Sarai. After Abram had been living 10 years in the land of Canaan, Sarai, Abram's wife, took her handmaid Hagar the Egyptian and gave her to her husband to have a child. And Abram did so. Abram went in unto Hagar with sexual affections. And Abram and Hagar became Abram's second wife. He presented himself to her, and she conceived. When Hagar saw that she had conceived, she began to despise her mistress Sarai. And Sarai, Hagar's mistress, despised Hagar because she became pregnant with Abram's child. Sarai spoke to Abram, saying, "The wrong of my false dealing is upon you. I have put my handmaid into your lap to embrace your bosom." When Hagar saw that she conceived, then I became despised in her eyes. Let the Almighty execute his judgment between me and her. Abram spoke to Sarai, saying, "Look and see, she is your handmaid. She is under your strength and power. She is in your hand. Do to her as it pleases you." Then Sarai afflicted and troubled Hagar. Sarai humiliated Hagar and dealt very hardly with her. Because of Sarai's oppression, Hagar ran away speedily. Then by a well of water on the path to Shur, a messenger of the Almighty's prophecy found her in the wilderness. He asked Hagar, "What brought you here? Where are you going?" Hagar answered, saying, "I am running away from the face of my mistress." Then the messenger of the Almighty's prophecy responded, saying, "Return to your mistress. Submit yourself under her strength and power." The messenger of the Almighty's prophecy continued speaking unto her, saying, "The Almighty will greatly multiply the descendants of your child. They will not be counted accurately because it will be a great multitude." The messenger of the Almighty's prophecy said unto her, "Look, you are with child. You will give birth to a son. You will call his name Yishmael, because the Almighty listens and understands your depression, your misery, your trouble, and your poverty. Your child will become a wild man, and his power and strength will be against every man. Every man's power and strength will be against him, but he will live in the presence of all his brethren." Afterwards, Hagar gave her attention to discern and distinguish what the messenger of the Almighty spoke to her. And after that time, she invited guests, then proclaimed and preached the honor, the reputation, the glory, and the authority of the Almighty. Hagar spoke aloud, saying, "You, Almighty, Creator of all things, you considered me. You have watched and observed me to find out if you could respect me. You see my appearance. You see my spectacle, and you look at my performance. Here, I have had an experience with you, and afterwards I considered your honor, your reputation, your authority, your glory, and your character. Therefore I have approved of you, and I respect you in the sight of others. I have designated this to be an individual memorial to honor you. Therefore the well was called Be'er Lahai Roi, the well of the one living true supreme being. This well is west of Kadesh, between Kadesh and Bered. Hagar gave birth to a son for Abram. Abram called his son's name Yishmael. Abram was 86 years old when Hagar gave birth to Yishmael. When Abram was 99 years old, the Almighty observed, considered, and still respected Abram. In a vision, the Almighty appeared visible and presented himself face to face with Abram. The Almighty spoke to Abram, saying, I am the Almighty, the most powerful being, the all-supreme ruler. Walk away from gods, godlike ones, and mighty ones, because they are false. Do not live in their manner, nor lead another to live in their manner of life. Do not walk abroad spreading their manner of life to make it grow greater. Walk away from angels and demons. They are men of rank, mighty heroes and imaginations. They are purposed to die prematurely. Live according to my command and declare my promise. In my sight you will be innocent. You will have healthy morals. You will have integrity and truth that is undefiled. You will be perfect without blemish. I have made my covenant with you. With you I have made my alliance between mankind and their Maker. I have entrusted you with my friendship. I have appointed you to direct, deliver, and constitute my law. I have appointed you to keep and perform my covenant. Then Abram fell onto his face, and the Almighty promised Abram, and spoke to Abram, saying, Behold, my covenant is with you, and you will be an ancestor of many nations. I am going to make you very powerful. Your honor, your reputation, your glory is chosen no more to be called Abram, the exalted king. But for your honor, your reputation, and glory, you are chosen to be called Abraham, the ancestral father of multitude, because I, the Almighty, have made you an exalted ancestor, an originator of many different nations of people. Between me and you I have established my covenant and my friendship, between me and your children, between me and their descendants, between me and their posterity, and all their generations I have established my covenant with them. My covenant is an everlasting treaty of peace. It is an everlasting alliance. It is an everlasting friendship. It is an everlasting agreement to be your one and only, all-supreme ruler. And I will be the same all-supreme ruler unto you, and to your children, unto your children's offspring, unto your children's offspring's descendants, unto their descendants, unto their descendants' posterity, in all their generations forever. The land wherein you are a stranger, I give and entrust to you, and to your children, to your children's offspring, to your children's offspring's descendants, to their descendants' posterity, and all their generations forever, even all the land of Canaan, for an everlasting inheritance, for an everlasting possession. And I, the Almighty, the Creator of all things, will be their one and only. I will be their all-supreme ruler. The Almighty continued speaking to Abraham, saying, Beware, you are my watchman. You will have charge of keeping my covenant. You yourself will watch over and protect my covenant. You will observe, celebrate, and perform the commands of my covenant. Your children, your children's offspring, your children's offspring's descendants, their descendants, unto their descendants' posterity, will have charge of keeping my covenant forever. They themselves will watch over and protect my covenant. They will observe, celebrate, and perform the commands of my covenant. in their generations forever. This is my covenant that you will perform, watch over, preserve, and protect. This is my covenant that your children, your children's offspring, your children's offspring's descendants, their descendants, unto their descendants' posterity will perform, watch over, preserve, and protect. You, every man and every man-child among you, will circumcise their flesh by cutting their foreskin off. This will be a signal and a sign of the covenant between me and you, between me and them. Therefore he among you that is 8 days old or older will be circumcised, every man, every male among the men, and every man-child in your house throughout all their generations. You will circumcise him that is born in your house. You will circumcise him that is bought with your money. You will circumcise any stranger joined to your house that is not of your semen. He that is born in your house, and him that is bought with your money must be circumcised in the flesh, by cutting their foreskin off, because my covenant will be in your flesh, and their flesh for an everlasting covenant. The man, the human male, and the man-child joined to your house, who is not circumcised in the flesh, whose foreskin is not cut off, that soul will be cut off from his people, because he has violated and broken my covenant. The Almighty continued speaking to Abraham, saying, As for your wife Sarai, you will no longer call your wife Sarai. You will no longer call her by the reputation, the honor, the glory, and authority of a noble princess, but you will call her Sarah. You will call her by the reputation, the honor, the glory, and authority of a noble queen. I will bless her to be praised and adored. I will give you a son from her. She will be a multitude, or she will be a mother of a multitude of people, and kings of the people will have her blood. Abraham laughed, then fell upon his face and considered. In his heart he asked himself, Will a child be born unto him that is 100 years old? Will Sarah, who is 90 years old, give birth to a child? Abraham spoke to the Almighty, saying, If only Ishmael might live and be preserved in your sight. The Almighty spoke to Abraham, saying, Your wife Sarah will give birth to a son for you. You will call his name Isaac. I will establish my covenant with him, and it will be an everlasting covenant. I will establish my covenant with his children, with his children's offspring, with his children's offspring's descendants, with their descendants, unto their descendants' posterity. As for Ishmael, I have listened with interest, and I understand you. Behold, I have blessed him to be praised and adored. I will make him fruitful, and I will make him become numerous in number. He will father 12 leaders, and I will make him a great nation. But I will establish my covenant with your son Isaac. Sarah will give birth to him at this same time next year. Then the Almighty stopped talking with Abram. The Almighty ascended up and away from Abraham. Abraham and his son Ishmael were circumcised on the same day. Abraham was 99 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh by cutting his foreskin off. Ishmael, his son, was 13 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh by cutting his foreskin off. Every man and every man-child born in Abraham's house, all the strangers joined to Abraham's house, and all those who were bought with his money, all the men of Abraham's house were circumcised in the flesh with him by cutting their foreskins off. In the plains of Mamre, in the heat of the day, Abraham was sitting in his tent's door. In a vision the Almighty had appeared and was visible before the face of Abraham. Abraham was considering that vision of the Almighty appearing visibly before his face. He gave his attention to discern and understand it. Then Abraham lifted his eyes and beheld 3 men were approaching him. As they drew near, when he saw them, he observed and considered. Then they were looking at each other in the face. Abraham discerned. He had foresaw one of them in a vision. Then he moved quickly from the tent's door and rushed to meet them and help them. Abraham bowed himself humbly with his face toward the ground. Then he spoke, saying, Now, if I have found favor in your sight, I pray you do not pass by this servant of the Almighty, and leave away from out of this land. Abraham continued speaking, saying, I hope you will let me get you all a little water to wash your feet that you journey on. If you trust in the Almighty, you can stay. Now go rest yourselves under the tree. I will get you all some food and bread. Rest and strengthen your hearts. Rest and comfort your hearts. After that, you can pass on by me to leave out of this land. So tell me, are you passing by the servant of the Almighty, and leaving away from out of my land? They answered, saying, So do as you have said. Then Abraham rushed into the tent to Sarah, and told her to quickly make 3 measures of fine meal, knead it into dough, and make cakes of bread upon the fire pot. Abraham moved quickly unto the herd, and got a good tender calf, then gave it to his servant. The young man rushed to prepare it. He took bread, butter, milk, and the calf that he had prepared, and set it before them. As the young man stood by them under the tree, they did eat. One of them asked Abraham, Where is your wife, Sarah? Abraham answered, saying, In the tent. Look and see. That same one of them said, Your wife Sarah will have a son. According to that child's time of life, I will certainly return to you. Sarah heard their voices. She listened with interest behind them in the tent's door. Now Abraham and Sarah were old in age and well stricken. This ceased to be with Sarah, her giving birth, and the custom of women. Therefore Sarah laughed within herself, asking, Will I have this delight, after I have grew to be old, my husband being old also? The Almighty, who was the only one of the men speaking to Abraham, asked Abraham, Why did Sarah laugh, saying, Will I of certainty give birth to a child now that I am old? Is anything too hard for the Almighty, the Creator of all things? Sarai will give birth to a son. I will return to you at the appointed time, according to that child's time of life. Because she had respect and honor for the Almighty, Sarah was astonished, then she became afraid. Sarah denied laughing by saying, I did not laugh. The Almighty spoke to her, saying, No, but you did laugh. Then the men rose up from there and looked toward Sodom with interest. Abraham went with them to bring them on the way. And the Almighty spoke to himself, saying, Will I keep the thing I am doing a secret from Abraham, seeing that Abraham is a chief ancestor of them that will surely become a great and mighty nation of people? I have made all the nations of the earth be blessed through him, and I will make all nations of the earth be blessed through his posterity. As I foresaw, as I learned to know him, it was revealed to me. I know he will command his children and his household after him. They will watch over and protect the way of the Almighty. They will preserve, observe, and perform the way of the Almighty. They will perform my law righteously. They will execute justice and execute judgment righteously. So I, the Almighty, will bring upon Abraham that which has been promised to him. Then the Almighty spoke to Abraham, saying, The sin and the guiltiness of Sodom and Gomorrah is being glorified and promoted in honor. The sin of Sodom and Gomorrah is very grievous, and their outcry has become very great. They are enjoying their sin. They are enjoying honor from being guilty, and that honor is gaining great glory. Therefore I declared, saying, Now I will go down to see them all together, whether they have done according to their outcry that is come to me, and if not, I will know. From there the men turned their faces away from Abraham and went toward Sodom. Yet Abraham continued to stand before the one of them who was the Almighty. Abraham drew near and asked, Will you destroy the wicked along with the righteous, along with those who are lawful in character? Will you destroy those with good morals, along with those who are morally wrong and hostile against you? If there be 50 righteous within the city, will you not spare the place for the sake of the 50 righteous that are in it? To kill the righteous along with the wicked, this is a thing very far away from you to do. Treating the righteous the same as the wicked is also a thing very far away from you to do. Will not the judge of all the earth do what is right? The Almighty answered Abraham, saying, If I find 50 righteous within the city of Sodom, then I will spare all their places for their sakes. Abraham responded, saying, Now I am only dust and ashes, but I have taken it upon myself to speak to the Almighty, the all-supreme ruler, the creator of all things. If there be 45 righteous in the city, will you destroy all the city for lack of 5 righteous persons? The Almighty answered, If I find 45 righteous persons there, then I will not destroy all of it. Abraham spoke to the Almighty again, saying, What if there be 40 righteous persons found there? The Almighty responded, I will not destroy them all for the 40's sake. Abraham spoke to the Almighty, saying, I will speak. O let not the all-supreme ruler be angry. If 30 righteous persons be found there, the Almighty answered, saying, If I find 30 righteous persons there, I will not destroy it all. Abraham spoke to the Almighty, saying, Now I have taken it upon myself to speak to the Almighty. If 20 righteous persons be found there, the Almighty answered, saying, I will not destroy it all for the sake of 20 righteous persons. Abraham spoke to the Almighty, saying, I will speak one more time. O let not the Almighty be angry, if 10 righteous persons be found there. And the Almighty answered, saying, I will not destroy it all for the sake of 10 righteous persons. As soon as the Almighty stopped communing with Abraham, the Almighty went his own way, and Abraham returned to his own place. At the evening, 2 messengers of the Almighty came into Sodom. Abraham's nephew Lot sat in the entrance of the gate of Sodom. When the messengers appeared visible, Lot considered and looked at them to distinguish them. He observed them. As they looked at one another, foreseeing an experience with them, Lot rose up to meet them and help them. Lot humbly bowed himself with his face toward the ground. Lot spoke to them, saying, As servants of the Almighty, the all-supreme ruler, remove yourselves from rebellion. As worshippers of the Almighty, turn away from wickedness. Now I pray that you turn in and come to my house where you will stay. You can wash your feet and rest all night. You will rise up early and go your way. They answered Lot, saying, We will stay in the streets all night long. Now Lot urged them greatly not to stay in the streets of the city, and they hearkened. They turned in to him. They entered into Lot's house, and Lot prepared them a feast, and baked unleavened bread. They did eat. Now before they lay down to sleep, the men of Sodom surrounded the house all around, both young and old. They were all men of mankind, all the men from every quarter of the city. They called on the reputation and honor of Lot. They spoke to him, asking, Where are the men that came into your house this night? Bring them out to us, so we can become acquainted with them, so we can make ourselves known to them. Bring them out to us, so we can physically know them, and they can physically know us. Lot went out the door to them and shut the door behind himself. Lot spoke to them, saying, My brethren, my kindred, I pray you do not be evil and act so wickedly. Now I have 2 daughters that are betrothed, but they have not known a man. This is the end of part 11 of my video series titled The Book of Genesis, Unsealed and Untold, that covers my manuscript titled The Almighty, the beginning, His creation of mankind, His promise to judge mankind, His war against the Elohim, His new world order. I am Shiloh, the last scribe for the house of Jacob. Watch my videos, follow me, and discover the recorded truth about the Almighty. His power, His glory, His honor, His reputation, His experiences with, and His message to all individual species of persons on the earth.